JobsWorth People. Welcome to JobsWorth People, a series of conversations with a specialist charged with building great company cultures. This week I speak with Carly Ash, a people leader with over 12 years of experience working with startup businesses and established organisations alike. I get Carly's view on the evolution of the role of people operations, ask why she's so passionate about helping businesses build diverse and inclusive cultures, and explore why the role she plays in an organisation is more important than ever, but so often undervalued. We also discussed what it was like to land a role at a tech startup in an emerging industry during the first lockdown whilst juggling motherhood, and not long after, a breast cancer diagnosis that would change her life forever. Whether you're a people person yourself, a business leader looking for some expert insight, or anyone interested in hearing more about one of the most resilient people I've ever spoken to, this is well worth a listen. So, the opening question is, when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, okay, yeah. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a mermaid.
Okay. I can't not laugh at these when they come out of people. I'm just like, okay, mermaid's one of the strangest ones. Go on, give me some context.
So I loved The Little Mermaid when I was younger.
The Disney connection.
Yeah, the OG Disney princesses.
Still to this day, Little Mermaid is up there, you reckon?
Do you know
Tier
what?
one?
Moana's up there. I think
So it's a
if
bit
I
new
was a little
school,
girl
that, isn't it,
now,
really?
I'd want to
Yeah.
grow up and be Moana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have The Rock as my husband. Why not?
Of course, yeah, understood.
But yeah, so I just loved The Little Mermaid. And I remember I used to, obviously we live by the sea.
Yeah.
So lots of beach days and things like that when I was younger. And I remember like I have this vision looking out to sea and just thinking, I want to be where the people are. Like I literally just want to be out there.
Quoted Little Mermaid
and
lyrics.
just looking to see if there would be any mermaids. Like I really wanted to be a mermaid. Then I found out, you know, my dad completely crushed my dreams. They're not real.
Oh shit. Okay.
So I was like, okay. So then I wanted to be a paper girl because I used to see the paper girl going around my clothes. And then my dad sat me down and started to talk about careers.
Okay.
So my dad was a self-employed. He was in the print business.
Yep.
And my dad really worked his way up. So he left school. He went into print in an apprentice sort of scheme back in the day. I think he was paid like £2 a week or something
Slave
crazy
labour,
like that.
basically.
Yeah. But yeah, it's where he learnt his trade and he worked his way up from there. So my parents are from the Midlands. My dad trained there when he left school and then got an opportunity and went down to East London.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, sort of started his print career from there. And he eventually, from an age that I can really truly remember, set up his own business, used to print for like the Daily Mail and everything, had these massive, colossal print machines in factories, went into business with these 3 other guys. And yeah, he was kind of killing it. So he used to talk to me a lot about business.
Yeah.
We'd be driving on the motorway, perhaps going back to see family in the Midlands, and he'd say, see that lorry, see the wheels on that lorry. A company has made those wheels for that lorry. He used to kind of like break everything down as to how a business would work and
all
put
the
this lorry
together.
So that's when I kind of fell in love with business. And what my dad was doing. So I used to go into the office with him and things like that. And from then I knew I wanted to work in an office.
So you come from mermaid, aspirations of being a mermaid, realised that that just wasn't a route. That's not a route you can go down.
No, it's not, unfortunately.
Paper girl seems to be a short-lived thing.
It was a short-lived thing, yeah.
But you're going by the examples that you see, which is round your clothes, someone's delivering papers and they're getting money for it.
Yeah, exactly. And she looked happy. She
Tips
was
at
outside
Christmas.
every day. Yeah, exactly. Like...
And then going to what I would classify as quite a grounded, probably a bit more of a realistic viewpoint that was instilled by your dad. How do you remember how old you were round the point he was having those conversations and you started to connect the dots of, okay, yeah, I can see how this is all made up?
Probably when I was about 9 or 10.
Okay.
I also loved acting at school. I was in quite a lot of drama and things like that. I would have pursued that as a career.
Wow.
But it's just tough. doing something like that. So my parents would sort of say, you know, we know you love this, but perhaps it could be more of a hobby and you would need to kind of basically get a real job and go down that kind of route. So that's when I used to go into work with my dad, and because I never really knew what I wanted to do. You know, I went to school with people who wanted to be a vet from a really young age. They loved animals, and they're vets now. Like they pursued it, like, but I never really had that. I think the only thing I did love was acting, but you know, that is a tough career to kind of
so let me ask
get
then,
into.
You had your parents, and I get, you know, the majority of parents, I think, if they're 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old daughter is going, I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
You're probably just going to, you know, I guess just err on the side of caution slightly and be like, okay, well, let's just set some realistic expectations. You'll get others that will go, yeah, fuck it, let's go for it. We're going to push in that direction. Did you have anyone, were your teachers at all trying to drive you to do that? Because that can be quite a conflicting thing, can't it, sometimes, if someone is saying to you, Carly, yeah, why not pursue it?
Yeah, they were. They would have conversations like, Carly's really talented. I was also, since a really young age, in performing arts. So I was doing all the dance, jazz, ballet, tap. My mum would take me, I'd be in like little modelling shows in London and things like that. So from a really young age, I was kind of a little bit in that world. My mum was a dancer.
Oh, wow.
So she, I think part of her wanted me to do that as well. But, you know, my dad, who was a lot more kind of perhaps pragmatic and just was like, look, this is tough if this is something that she wants to pursue. So so I get it because I obviously we're both parents, and I am confident my son, my oldest Finley, will come to me one day and go, I want to be an actor. And in a way I feel like he bloody should, because this kid is so confident, and he can sing, he can memorize lyrics, he can do all these things, but there's still a part of me that goes, I don't know anyone that became an actor, but I know it's brutal, and I know your chances of success are incredibly slim. So I think I can completely empathise with your dad's perspective, or your parents in general, which is, you could do that, but you've got a very much more stable chance of success, let's say, if you go down what I classify as a more traditional employment I think
route.
As well, it was a lot kind of tougher in those. I think it was tougher in those days maybe to get something, whereas now it seems like there's open kind of competitions. You had like X Factor and things like that you could go and audition for, and that kind of thing, that's made real kind of stars
Dates
out
us
of
slightly,
people.
doesn't it, when we say we're talking about this pre-X Factor or Pop Idol or anything like that.
I know,
that's
exactly.
very terrifying.
But even like the world of TikTok and things like that now, people have got a platform they can put themselves onto and get a following. And become superstars in that way and build their career in that world should they want to pursue it. I think it's easier for people now. I'm not saying it's easy to be an influencer. I know, obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about that. Like, my background there. But I feel like you'd probably be a bit more open-minded to it should Finley come to you and say, you'd be like, okay, well, you could probably go down this route and build a following and go from there. You could kind of be found better, whereas back then I feel like it might have been harder. I don't know, I might be wrong.
I get that, because I think we're talking late 90s, something like that, aren't we, around that kind of time into early 2000s, and there just wasn't the infrastructure there to launch people into those things. I mean, the reason I always start with asking what people wanted to be when they were older is just to see if there's a connection between what you then went on to do. I'm trying to think, probably a tenuous one if I tried to connect Mermaid and then what you do now as a head of people, VP of people, which we'll talk more about your skill set now. But yeah, I like to get an idea of what's kind of launched you into the career path you actually went on. And I think your dad instilling that, that love of business for you was pretty important and pretty fundamental from the sound of it. Yeah,
and I was there, I was kind of seeing sort of every detail of how a business works and how it's kind of designed and put together. My dad is an absolute hustler,
right,
and so am I. I've got that from my dad. So he's kind of really instilled that in me. So when I was at school, I left school, I went to college, and again didn't know what I wanted to do, so I did a diploma in sort of like being like a secretarial studies. It was like a PAEA kind of diploma. I dropped out. It wasn't for me.
Where did you go?
So I didn't go to another college.
Right.
I got a job at a stonemasonry in the office as an office junior. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to do what my dad did. I'm just going to work my way up. I'm just going to learn everything about this business until I sort of get into a kind of top position.
Yeah.
So I was there for 5 years and I left as their office manager, which was kind of the highest you could be.
That was the ceiling you were going to reach.
Yeah, that was the ceiling I was going to reach, but I absolutely loved it. I learned so much again about business in that company. Again, there was a factory, so I was always up in the factory. I'd kind of felt like I'd gained a lot of experience around how factories work, and even just like the factory culture from
it's a different audience,
my dad.
isn't it? It's a different group of people and a demographic that you're working with and dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. And I absolutely loved it. I thrive in that kind of environment as well. It's kind of quite relaxed. I feel like you can really be yourself, have a bit of a laugh. Get on with the day job as such. So yeah, I absolutely adored it. And I feel like I learned, my MD gave me so much opportunity as well, sort of client facing roles as well. They're going out sort of selling as well, learning sort of all the operations, customer sort of success, you know, even going into a factory and working on, they were sort of a stonemasonry, working on worktops and things like that. So it was just great.
It's a few different hats.
It was just brilliant. Like, yeah, I had a few different hats, but I absolutely loved it.
Okay. What a big part of a lot of the conversations I have are all also focused on career guidance that you received in a young age, whether that's inspiration, which it sounds like your dad to you was a huge inspiration in your life from a work perspective, or what I call like your formal guidance that I remember not being particularly positive, but at college. So, okay, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? Here are the routes that are open to you. Do you remember any of the conversations that you were having around that time? Did you have any formal career guidance through secondary school or college? You're pulling a face that most people pull. And I know everyone's listening to this, but it is literally everyone's thinking, no, I can't remember it.
I can't.
Which says to me, it was just completely uninspiring. That's it. I mean, there's nothing, I can't remember much, but I can remember you were, as a guy at 16, 17, you were kind of categorised into, are you going to go into the corporate route, corporate world, go up to London, finance, banking, or are you going to go and learn a trade? And they were really the two main channels that there was a focus on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why I ask, but you have pulled exactly the same face that most people have.
No, I can't help you there, sorry. There was no inspirational conversation or
Isn't it a shame though? Do you think that's a shame? I mean, you've gone on to have a really successful career and it doesn't sound at all like you regret the route that you went down. But again, I think about what I want my kids to experience, and I would like there to be more of that inspiring external viewpoint coming into education to say, do you know what? This is the weird and wonderful world of jobs that are available to you. Yeah,
I think I had that demonstrated to me from such a young age with my dad.
Yeah.
Just literally, I don't know how to say it, like just in everything that he was doing, it was literally displayed to me throughout my life. There was no inspirational conversation. Like I say, I remember the conversations I used to have about how a lorry was built and things like that. And you know, I would always hear him, like I didn't really see him during the week as well, because he was always in London working till late, so I'd see him on the weekends and he'd be talking about work and things like that, and I'd be listening to it, and it's obviously instilled something in me. Definitely. It's obviously inspired me in some way, and it inspired me because my dad, like, he would always show me photos and things like that, but my dad worked really hard to get to where he was and to go out on his own, and he did have a lot of challenges along the way, and I saw those firsthand. And I think it's the experiences that my dad went through that have really shaped me and kind of it's turned me into the person that I am. I'm just a hustler like my dad. Yeah.
What do you think about that term hustler? Because you mentioned it describing your dad and you said you're one too. And it's interesting that you said that you didn't see your dad during the week as well, and you saw him at the weekend. Because, hustler means, that you are committed to your job. And not saying that you're not committed to your family, but the stereotypical image is you work from really early in the morning till late at night with the goal of really starting to build something or making money.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that term? Because it's got a bit of a negative stigma now. Because you've seen, you're on LinkedIn, maybe not as much as me, but you're on LinkedIn. And, you know, the hustle culture, I think, has now got a negative stigma against it.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? And what's the challenge? Because I feel like you might have one.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I'm quite torn. So I would say in the position and the role that I play in organisations now, it's not something that I would advocate.
A difficult point to take, isn't it? Yeah.
But I'm the classic person who will give out that advice but not listen to it myself.
Yeah, okay.
It's just who I am, but I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it.
Yep.
And I think that's the same for anyone. You just wouldn't do something if you didn't love it, and you wouldn't give it all the blood, sweat and tears if you didn't enjoy what you were doing. You don't have to do it. You don't have to be that hustler. I could log in at 9 and finish at 5, do my day's work and that's it. But to me, I'm not adding enough value in that way. And it's not because of the hours that I'm doing or showing that I'm online until late. You know, I have a family, so actually I might be out for an hour or two during the day because I'm at school drop-offs or an after-school club, or just being a general taxi driver for my son. But then I'll be back on later on after having dinner with my family to finish off kind of the day's work and anything else that I wanted to do in my day that was purposeful towards my work. So actually, I equally don't stand there and preach to my people in my organisation and say, you know, only do your hours, etc., etc. I just say, do what's right for you. If you want to stay on until late, that's fine. But if I see that you're burning out and you're struggling and you're not performing, we need to have a conversation. Like, you need to rein it in. So that's where the coach in me comes out.
And that's brilliant, because if you I don't know, throw yourself into this dictionary definition of what, you know, a hustler would be in a work context. Yeah, you're going to burn out, aren't you? But it's nice to know that there are people like you in organisations that have an eye or have processes or just have a way of monitoring how people are being impacted by that. Because you want people that are driven, you want people that are passionate, but you also want them to be able to identify when they have to look after themselves and maybe draw back slightly. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, because you use that term hustler, and I can see that you're not using it in a negative way. I'm on board with what you're saying. Like, if I really practice what I preach to organisations all the time, the business wouldn't be where it is now. I wouldn't be nearly 5 years down the line and still making money doing this. Work-life balance is difficult. It's a real challenge. But I'm fortunate, and it sounds like you are, to really enjoy what I do. So. Yeah. Okay. Tell me then. So stonemasons. Yeah. 5-6 years with them. Just bring me up to the point. Yeah, let's have kind of a run through of where you went after that. So how old were you when you left the stonemasons, and why did you leave?
Oh gosh, how old was I?
Maybe if
early 20s.
Early 20s. Okay.
I just can't remember.
So do you remember why you left?
Yeah, I went to Australia. Okay. Just went to Australia with some friends, and just wanted to do that for a bit. Okay. I think I felt a little bit different as well, because everyone was going to college 5 years prior, then going on to university. Felt like I was missing out a little bit on what everyone else was doing lifestyle. In that sense. Yeah, I was one of the few that just went out to work and was like, I just want to start earning money. Yeah. And then everyone was kind of doing their traveling bit, and I was like, well, I can do that too. So I'm going to. So I did that for a bit.
How long's a bit?
A bit was about 6 months. Planned to go for a year, came back because I just wanted to get on and work, and just build a life for myself. Yeah, that intrinsic drive in you just started to rev up again. And I remember, and it just wasn't for me, the whole backpacking, staying in hostels. I remember getting in a taxi in Brisbane, and he was like, you're the cleanest looking backpacker I've ever seen. And I was just like, I just don't think this is for me. This is just not for me. Yeah. So came back and started working down the road. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So just before we started recording, Carly was talking about where my office is. A few buildings down, Carly used to work. I'm talking to the listener, but yeah. So just to give you some context. But okay. Yeah. So and there I was so I left obviously the stonemasonry as an office manager. So I got an office manager role. Yep. There it was a construction company. Was doing that for a bit, and within that you're sort of doing a lot of there's HR aspects to your role. There's onboarding. Bit of L&D. Yeah. Okay. and working really closely with the MD. So I feel like you're that relationship builder, especially with his clients, and you're his coach as well. And then from there, I went to London, right, to a facilities management company, in an EA office managerial role that had a bit of HR admin thrown in. And I was there for about 3-4 years. And that's when the HR aspect started to kind of come into my day to day. So I was onboarding staff. There was some L&D involved in that. I was in a lot of exec meetings, sort of minuting and things like that, putting agendas together. But I would always have my MD's direct reports coming to me for coaching. And that's when I started to realise what my passions were. Okay. I was figuring it out. Yeah. And then I had my MD actually left and took me with him to another organisation where we sort of set up a commercial department in the organisation. And I was in the office with all of the HR, with the HR director, people like HR at the time, was HR coordinator. And I was just learning so much about the craft there, loved it. And then took a people ops generalist role at a tech company about a year later, and that is where I really went into the world of HR. I was working at the time with she was a consultant. She was at sort of director level, and she was my coach. Right. She was my mentor. And she was just like, you are brilliant at this. Like, it's so natural to you. And I had so many ideas. And it was when I feel like it was when people ops was coming into everything.
Yeah, because it's been a relatively new evolution, hasn't it? I think that terminology to describe what people do. Yeah. And I think it's moved on beyond that.
Yeah, it has.
Definitely post-pandemic, I think.
Absolutely.
It's really evolved further, which we'll go on to talk about a bit more.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, I just want to go back to as well, because I think a lot of people that listen to this may be in a position where they're thinking, they get to a point in one organisation, having worked there for a few years, and they're wondering what's the catalyst for them leaving? They know they want to do more, but what's the push? So if we go back to the role that you took on down the road, office manager there, take me through the kind of impetus behind why you left there. Again, was the driver, you knew you wanted to move on, you knew you wanted to do, I'm going to say, bigger, better things in the most respectful way.
Yeah.
You had a goal. And
it was definitely that. Okay. It was definitely that. I knew I had to
go to London.
I had to go to the big bright lights of London City, and see if someone would give me an opportunity, and they did. And it went from there. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
Because I think a lot of people can get stuck and get very comfortable, and it's really easy, especially in the type of work maybe that you were doing beforehand. I think tenure for office managers or people in that capacity can be incredibly long. Yeah. Because you've got the right level of responsibility, you've got the right level of flexibility, and there's a degree of comfort the longer you stay in a business. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. You find your feet and you know how things work. So to just kind of unleash yourself from that comfort zone and go, yeah, shit, I'm throwing myself in, not the deep end, but you know what I mean, like to a much bigger pond by going to London. Yeah. I think you've got to be incredibly brave to do that.
Yeah. And I think kind of going back to your initial question, like with all seriousness, when you sort of said, what did you want to be when you were growing up? I didn't know. And I still didn't know when I was working down the road. I was figuring it out, but I knew I could build good relationships. I knew I could do a lot of admin. I could do anything that was kind of getting thrown my way. And I just built on that over kind of maybe, 5, 6, 7 years. Yeah. Until someone gave me that opportunity in London, and I knew there was so much more that I could do, but what it was, I just wasn't sure. Yeah.
And I guess with this evolution of the people ops thing, it's like, how do you consolidate all those skills into one job or one role? Because you're cherry picking things probably you've seen by these really inspiring people, colleagues around you, and thinking if there's one job that I could put a title on and then embody that'd be really handy. So it seems like that evolution started to happen around the right time.
Yeah, it really did. And it just made so much sense. It was just, there's essentially like so many hats that you have to wear. And there's just so much to it. I was just like, this makes perfect sense. Like how the evolution of people ops was happening, the evolution of me was happening kind of alongside.
There was a synergy there.
There was a true synergy there. And I was just like, I found my place.
Brilliant.
So yeah.
So when you were younger, you didn't know what you want to be when you grew up. Do you know now?
Yeah, I do know now.
Yeah, what an amazing thing.
But
I bloody don't.
only recently.
Yeah.
Only recently. And, you know, I've gone through a lot personally over the last few years. Yeah. And that makes you really reflect on your purpose. But I've now allowed myself, you know, I left my company sort of towards the end of last year, and I wanted that time to think about what my purpose was. Yeah. And it's definitely given me that. So
good. We're going to go, I think we'll jump forward slightly. So you said you joined one tech firm, and that's where you started to take on your kind of your real day-to-day HR responsibility moving forward with that. That isn't Influencer, is it? That's the one before Influencer.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Okay. So I think we'll move to Influencer.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
And so you found a role, the one previous. Who was that with? The previous.
So that was My Drive. They were called My Drive Solutions. Yeah.
Okay. So you were there for about 6 years, weren't you? Okay. So then what's the driver to leave My Drive and go to Influencer?
Well, so My Drive were actually acquired by a huge Italian insurance company.
Wow, okay.
And they saw us as an asset, and they merged everything that we did in-house.
Right.
So we all were made redundant, and I had to close the company down.
Right.
So that's why I left. Well, I don't want to say because you don't know. You know, I'm one of these people that genuinely believes everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, I stayed on. I had to make 60 people immediately redundant, let go, lost their jobs. And then there was about 50 of us that stayed to kind of like just get everything wrapped up. So I stayed, and I had a few months to find something. I went into Influencer. It was the first one, and I got it. And I genuinely believe, you know, what happened there led me to that, and then led me to what kind of has happened over the last few years with them. So which has been pretty career changing, defining. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay. So tell me that then, My Drive, you've been part of that business for 6 years, and then very quickly they're acquired, which is great news for the people that, you know, that at the very top of a company like that are going through the acquisition, and they're probably aware of that maybe a little bit before you are too.
Yeah. So we were actually acquired 5 years prior.
Oh, okay.
So Generali had acquired us. We've gone through all of that transition, went through that journey, and then sort of 5 years later, they.
Wow! So it was a long process to then wrap that business up.
Yeah.
Wow. What was it like having to make, or having to be the mouthpiece for that company making 60 redundancies?
Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah. Had you ever had to do anything like that before?
No. Wow. No. A lot had happened in leadership as well, which I wouldn't want to say on the podcast. But my CTO was placed as our interim CEO.
Wow. I
knew something was up, and I went into work that day, and I could just tell by his body language he wasn't good. So usually with my execs as well, I will literally just go, come on, let's just go and get a coffee. Or
is that the coaching? It is the coaching mindset that comes in really sometimes, and being an empath as well. I am an empath. I can just sense it.
And so and he just immediately was just like, this is what's happening, and it's happening today, and like, I want to tell you because we need to get into action. There's a lot of people who are going to be, everyone's losing their jobs. And I took about 2 seconds to let that hit and go, okay, that does include me. I've lost my job as well, but okay, let's just sort this out. I'll be all right. And that was that.
Was that
swung into action.
That pragmatism, proactivity that your dad has driven into
I think
too,
it was.
Maybe kicked in, plus your experience, obviously.
Definitely. And, you know, I grew up seeing my dad's business went into, like, he lost one business, one went into liquidation. And when I say about that hustler, he would just dust himself off, pick himself back up.
Resilience.
Yeah. And I think I've got that from my dad.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, we'll go on to what's happened on your personal journey as well, Carly. But I would say, if there's anyone that embodies resilience, then you are a very good example of that for sure. Okay, so that's a really rough thing to have to go through, making those decisions. It's part and parcel, I would say, of the type of role that you hold in businesses. But maybe. I ask about the kind of personal impact on you of having to make those decisions, because maybe that's not always thought about too much by the individuals going through it. You're going through it too, but you're also orchestrating this for another 60 people.
Yeah.
So what's the toll that takes on you? You can be pragmatic about it, and you can be proactive, and you've got to get it done. But they're all hard decisions to make.
They are, but you have to put your personal feelings to one side.
Yeah.
I think, immediately throwing yourself into action and just making sure everyone else is going to be okay, and that they're going to be kind of secure financially when they're leaving, is something that I worked really, really hard on.
Yeah.
With our owners, essentially. And within that, obviously, I knew that I was going to also be okay. So that was just a relief. That's all anyone wants to know. I'm going to lose my job. Okay. What does this mean for me financially? And then it's just comfort for that, with that blow. So I just wanted to get that sorted out as soon as possible. But for me personally, in those kinds of situations, you have to put your feelings to one side and just think of your workforce.
Yeah.
So to be honest with you, I don't really remember thinking much.
Just,
personally.
I guess, a degree of autopilot as well, based on
you just
your
have
experience.
the role. I take my role very seriously in those kinds of challenging times, to be that calm in that chaos. And that's when, I don't know how I've said this to many people. I don't know how I do, but I just can block myself off from what's happening personally and just get on with the job. What
an incredible skill to have, because as an empath as well, there's always that risk that you're going to open the floodgates to feel what everyone else is feeling, and it's not, being able to compartmentalize it doesn't mean you're not feeling it, but it means that's not going to stop you doing the tasks and the jobs that you need to get done.
Yeah, but the last thing that they need to see is
you
me crumbling.
Yeah.
So that's what's I will go home and crumble, and maybe that's kind of where that's my safe place.
Yes, yeah.
And I'll talk about it with like my other half, who's, I always say he's my coach.
Yeah. They're the best relationships, aren't they, when you've got that?
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah, it can work like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm everyone's therapist, he's mine. So
there you go. That's good. He sounds like a legend, because that's a lot to take on.
It is a lot to take on.
Okay, so from my drive, going through what sounds like quite again, another career-defining moment for you, to put yourself, you forge yourself in those experiences, don't you? You never want to go through them again, I can imagine, but that's part and parcel, and you gain that experience, and you start with a company called Influencer. That was the first. Did you say that was the first job you interviewed for? Outside of my drive.
Yeah.
Okay. And just give us a bit of context again about how that happened, because this is where so just for anyone listening, I've known Carly for a long time. We haven't spoken for a good number of years, and then through LinkedIn, the weird world of LinkedIn, I started to become aware that you had joined Influencer, which at the time, and I don't know much about the broader market, was the company doing what they were doing in the industry they were doing it in. Is that a fair description?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did that come about? Because you played a huge role in the growth of that business.
Yeah.
So just give us like a potted history of getting that role.
Yeah.
And then what happened in the early formative years there?
So I was looking, obviously lost my job at my drive, and I was looking for my next role, and what attracted me to the role was it was called Head of Heart.
Yeah, they'd labelled it that.
They'd labelled it
nice.
that.
Okay, I didn't know if that was you.
No.
Retrospectively after joining. Okay, no. I like that. Right.
But if a title had any more alignment to my place in an organisation, I was like, this one's it. So I applied, and I got an interview, and went into their offices in Covent Garden. This, bearing in mind, was about 2 months before the pandemic.
I was going to ask where the chronology was, because I know like 2020 was a pretty big year for you anyway.
Yeah.
For the world, I could argue, but definitely for you.
Yeah.
So that was, so we're talking February time?
January.
February? Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah, so it was January, and met Ben, the CEO, and the COO at the time. And to be honest with you, I went for the role, and I just thought it might have been a bit big for me, but I thought, just me being me, I'm just going to put myself forward, see if there's an opportunity. I know what I can bring to a company like this. I was really excited by the company, and I think that really came across to Ben, and him and I just hit it off straight away. And I remember sitting at the table at the end of the interview and was just like, I'd love to work with you. Like, give me this opportunity. And he was just kind of like, okay, like, you know, poker face was on, but he's since told me literally as soon as I walked in, he was like, she's got the job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice,
so I had a couple of stages, and then, I got the job. So, and then I started there in the March. And
what a month.
What a month.
What a month.
What a month. So yeah, it was really a really quite conflicting time as well, because I was finishing up with my drive. And I was contracted to stay there to literally turn the lights off. Yeah. And I wanted to see that through. I owed it to everybody that was staying on to do that, and everything. So I really wanted to see that through. I was really supporting my interim CEO, who was the CTO and the founder of that business as well, who was finding it really, really hard.
Oh, I can just imagine the complexity of all those emotions.
Yeah, it was really, really tough. And I just wanted to stay and see it all through. But equally, I had my new CEO and my CVO, my two founders, calling me when everything was kind of happening or working from home. Like, what do we do? Like, I think everybody in the world, in the world of work, was just like, how the hell are we going to navigate this? Yeah. And they didn't have a people function at all. So they were calling me, and I just had two conflicting things kind of going on at the time.
So how much did they overlap then, Carly? The closing of my drive and then you starting or being on Influencers Radar?
So I wanted to finish at my drive and then take 2 weeks off, have a bit of a hollybob, and then start at Influencer. But I finished at my drive on the Friday and started at Influencer on the Monday.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. So yeah, you are joining a growing business or what? So I don't know what the dictionary definition of startup or scale up are, but are they startup at this point?
They were startup. They just had their Series A.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Literally, I think a few months prior. Yeah. So yeah, very much startup at that point.
And headcount wise at that point?
Headcount wise, they were 20 people at that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
And being told, right, guys, yeah, this is the new world. Everyone panic. So COVID hit. All offices. They were based in Covent Garden. They just moved into their new lovely office in Long Acre. God. It was a stunning office as well. Really great, really, really great spot. And it was actually one of the reasons why I joined. It had such a great vibe. When I walked in, real kind of like in that hustly part of Covent Garden. So they had to tell everybody to work from home. Literally, people were walking out with their monitors under their arm going home, and we should be back in a week or two. That was the viewpoint, wasn't it? From so many people, no one knew how long this fucking thing was going to last.
Yeah, it was crazy. So we were also, the plans were, so in my interview stages were for us within about sort of 6 months, we would be opening our office in New York. Right. And Ben and I were actually, there was crossover. I was in New York for a few days at the same time as Ben before I joined, where he was looking at office space and like potentially signing contracts and things like that. But obviously that got massively put on pause, and we didn't actually end up opening in New York for about 2 years later, I think it was.
So from your position, you've gone from secure, the roller coaster of emotions you must have been going through at My Drive to turn the lights off. Then you're starting with a new business. They've just, a few months after Series A funding kicked in, all these big growth plans, the role by your own admission, slightly bigger than your experience was at the time, but all of the tools to make that work for you.
Yeah.
And then you just get this explosion of COVID. Everyone has to work from home.
Yeah.
What are you feeling at that point? Again, does that autopilot pragmatism kick in?
Yeah, it did. So I immediately put a workforce together of senior managers who met on calls every morning, every afternoon, because all the rules and everything were just changing constantly. And what we needed to be doing. So we were just meeting, checking in, who's doing okay, who's not, what's the work that we've got out, what have we got to get done, what's the new guidance that's coming out, how are we going to navigate that. So yeah, I just kind of swung into action and just did.
Now you mentioned your son. Have you had your little boy?
Yeah, so he was about 16 months at that point. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a huge... Okay, well, there's so many questions I want to ask on the back of this, and it's all the practicalities of how you enable a workforce to work remotely. And I think there's lots of chats that have been had around that. And fortunately, in a way, those are kind of standard practice now for so many businesses. At the time, it was all brand new.
Yeah.
And this remote working it's accelerated the adoption of it for so many companies, which I think there's a lot of positives from. But I'm going to save all those questions because they get a bit geeky and we could probably talk about that. So you've got your son, 16 months old. You've started a brand new role in a scaling business during the pandemic. All the hurdles that you're getting over and making waves and making an impact. And then in May, you get some pretty big news on the personal front.
Yeah,
so
in April,
Yeah, so this is, I would imagine, one of the biggest challenges you face. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah,
Carly?
so I'd been in the job for about 3 weeks. And it was Easter weekend, and so obviously there was a lovely long weekend. And do you know what? I was really enjoying lockdown.
Yeah,
I think everybody was at first. People were like popping prosecco at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, like just loving life. Not that I was doing that
banging
in the week.
Pans.
Yeah, banging pans, clapping for the NHS.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was enjoying it quite a bit, and we just had a bit of a boozy Zoom call the night before, like pub quiz, that kind of thing. And I woke up and I got a text from Copperfield, which are a breast cancer charity, who send monthly texts to people to remind them to check their breasts. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll have a quick check because it reminded me, and I felt a lump in my breast, fast forward a couple of weeks later, I was told that I had breast cancer. So, yeah. So that was a pretty, huge shock.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Usually my response is, I can imagine. I just can't imagine what it must feel like with everything else going on. And I guess that kind of blows your world up when you hear that, given you're a mum. Yeah. Given that you've started in this new role, all these things. I remember finding out about your diagnosis through some incredibly brave videos you were posting on Instagram at the time. And I think my other half reached out to you.
Yeah, she did.
Just to say how brave and inspiring you were, because you faced that with so much grace throughout the whole thing. So I don't think I've ever told you that, but it was so amazing to see the way you dealt with it.
Thank you.
But I just can't imagine internally all of the thoughts that go through your head. So you found out quite early, didn't you?
Yeah, very early.
So maybe take us through a bit of that process and what that, I don't even know how many years that went on for, and the treatment that you went through, Carly. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm still going through treatment. Okay. So it's still going on, but the main thing is I'm cancer free.
Yeah.
So basically it was during the pandemic. And I called my GP after the Easter weekend and said, hi, I've got found a lump in my breast. What do I do? And during that time, so the lump that I felt was a really pea-sized lump, and it was very, very hard. It wasn't moving. And my initial thought was, like, fuck, if I can swear, sorry.
Yeah,
but that was kind of what I thought. That is a lump. That's definitely a lump in my breast. But equally, I was like, I'm really young. It can't be cancer. And looking, Googling, 9 times out of 10, it's a cyst, or it's, I'd had a baby 17 months before. So your breasts change during that time from breastfeeding and things like that. And you get all kinds of lumps and bumps. So there were so many different things it could have been. I was like, I'm not going to freak out. I'm going to just be, logical about this and just take this in stages. So I called my GP, and it was, obviously during the pandemic. And she said, well, I can't see you right now. So can you just wait a bit? And I was like, I can't really wait. I've got a lump in my breast. So what can you do? Because I was thinking, if I was calling you because I just broken my leg, are you going to tell me to wait?
Yeah.
Or,
just see how it goes.
Yeah, just see how it goes. Like, no. So she then said, well, you have had a baby very recently, and sort of said about all the breastfeeding kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And she said, and there's your cycle as well. So like there's a lot of change in women's cycles and things like that with their breasts and things like that. So it could be that. And I was like, I don't really want to take a chance. Surely someone can see me.
You've got to advocate for yourself at that point, for sure. Yeah.
And then, I got very emotional on the phone, because I was just like, I have a family. You need to see me. And she was like, okay, because you're so upset, I'm going to refer you to the breast clinic.
My God.
So I was like, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, hun.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks later, sort of fast forward that time, I went to the breast clinic, and even then, a doctor sort of checks you first, a physical examination, and he was just like, I'm sure it's just a cyst, it's fine. And I was like, great, okay. Bearing in mind as well, obviously I'd just started my new job. So they said, allowed about 3 hours to be at the breast clinic. I said to Ben, I was like, I'll probably only be half an hour. Didn't even tell him, because I was like, I've only just started working with this guy for 3 weeks. I'm not going to tell him I've got a lump in my breast. I was like, I've got a hospital appointment. I'll be out for a couple of hours this morning, but I'll be online.
Yep.
So I had my laptop and I was working away in the breast clinic like a crazy woman, taking calls, everything. And then, as time was kind of going on, they did a mammogram, then they did another scan, then they did a biopsy. And as time was going on, I was like, but I was thinking, well, they're doing all the checks. It's all fine.
It's diligent, and that's what you want.
That's what you
to
want.
Go through.
Exactly. And I remember like messaging Ben, just being like, I'm sorry, I think I'm actually going to be here a bit longer. And he was just like, it's fine. And then, they took me into a room. And bearing in mind as well, I was at the appointment completely on my own, because it was the pandemic and you couldn't take anyone else with you. It wasn't even the time of face masks.
Really? Right,
literal, there was social distancing. So got told that when I was completely on my own. So I think that out of everything was probably the worst out of all of it. Being told that news on your own is the worst thing that someone could have to go through.
And a relative stranger sat across from you telling you this at 2 meters apart.
Yeah.
And
they couldn't even give me a hug.
Yeah, even if they'd wanted to. Yeah. That is just not a thing that you can do. Wow.
It was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to dwell on it too much, because I don't. But I feel I really appreciate the transparency, because I think, again, if anyone's listening to this, that you can help, or at least get thinking if they do need to go through the process of getting checked.
Yeah.
And I know you're a big advocate for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making sure
it's
the
so
awareness
important.
is very high.
Yeah.
And you're so still going through treatment.
Yeah, still going through treatment.
Yeah.
So I had mastectomy, then I had reconstruction, and then I had chemo, and then I had and now I'm on hormone therapy, which is, so my cancer was an estrogen receptive cancer. So I can't produce estrogen in my body in case there's any sort of dormant cancer cells still in there.
Yeah.
So I have to have these injections monthly that shut my ovaries down, and I have to take a tablet every day to ensure everything's just kind of like not produced. So I'm therefore in a medical menopause.
Yeah.
And I've been in a medical menopause for since October 2020.
Wow.
So that continues for 5 years. But I actually made the decision to stop in December of last year.
Okay.
Because it's quite a common thing, and I think that's something that women need to know, that they've got options. They don't just have to do what an oncologist is telling them to. You can go out and look at data, and there's a lot of data out there for anyone that's going through breast cancer and going through hormone therapy. It is really tough going through a medical menopause. You have so much brain fog. We were talking before I came in here, and I completely just blanked in what I was saying to you. And that is it's hard. It's really embarrassing as a woman when that's happening to you. There's a lot of weight gain. There's a lot of fatigue. Because you're not producing estrogen anymore, the hormone estrogen is like a tonic for your joints, so you have really achy joints.
Right. Wow.
And I was even finding on my dog walks, which I love, my hips, I felt like I was like a 60-year-old.
Really?
Sorry to any 60-year-olds, like.
I'm sure there's very, very mobile 60-year-olds listening too.
Exactly. But it was just really tough, and I'm, in sort of my mid to late 30s, and I just got fed up of feeling like this, and I've been given this chance in my life. The cancer was found early, it was taken out. I've done everything that I can to ensure I'm as healthy as possible. I want good quality of life now.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It becomes about a balance of, and I can't put myself in your position, but if I stretch so far to be able to imagine, I think after a point you have to factor that in, don't you? Especially with a young family.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just really important to me that after making that kind of decision, and it was something, I'd never advocate to go and do that on your own. You have to talk to your breast care team, and I've got a team behind me who are really, really supportive. So based on, my cancer type and everything, all the treatments and everything that I've had and my lifestyle, I should be okay.
The prognosis is really good.
The prognosis is really good. So that's the main thing.
Amazing. From start to finish, obviously it continues, Carly. And, but from the start to the point where you kind of finished your treatment and became cancer free, how much of that time was in parallel with your time at Influencer? I mean, all of it.
All of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I'll group both of these things, although they're very different life events, obviously, but becoming a mum, I guess gives you a completely different perspective on your role as a head of people, a head of heart.
Yeah.
Because you're an empath, so you can empathise with parents without necessarily being one. But when you become one, and I know this from my own transition into fatherhood too, nothing prepares you for being a parent until you've actually got a human being that is yours that you have to look after.
Yeah.
So you've had that, and then you've had obviously your incredible journey with being diagnosed with breast cancer too. Do you feel like both of those events have kind of, I'm not going to say helped you in what you do for a living, but have they informed or impacted what you now do for a living in terms of the way you can empathise? They've
empowered me.
Yeah, amazing. I love that word.
Yeah, they've really empowered me. And everything else that you just said, absolutely. It's empowered me. It's enabled me to empathise with mothers, fathers, people going through adoption, people going through fertility treatment. And in more recently, I've really noticed as well a lot of women of my age who haven't, inverted commas, settled down or, aren't, conforming to what society tells you to do, and are freezing their eggs and they're taking injections and they feel really rubbish. And I think actually organisations need to be looking at that a little bit more, especially with the Gen Z workforce coming in. So there's a lot there. It's really helped me to kind of empathise in that sense. It's helped me to empathise with women who are older going through the menopause, women who are my age going through the perimenopause. It's helped me to empathise with cancer patients and carers and everything. So genuinely think it's empowered me in my role even more so.
What a great perspective to take from it as well, because I would imagine the path of least resistance is to get into a hole and just feel like my world is literally ending.
Yeah.
And to have taken those lessons from it, I think are great. And just to give Carly's page a shout out where she shares, just remind me of the handle on Instagram. I'm going to mention it.
It's at Soul and Sea Wellness.
Nice, yeah. So yeah, Carly has been a big advocate for awareness during her journey with breast cancer, and now wellness and health and well-being post that diagnosis.
Yeah.
So there are amazing stuff on there. And we were talking before recording that Carly's going to continue investing some time in that and carry on showcasing that. Wow. Okay, that's quite the year. So just to kind of ease in after that. So I'm wondering when, you know, I don't know what the process is, but when you've got the diagnosis now that you're cancer free, so I imagine there's a feeling of, is it as far as elation, or is there anything? What did you feel?
No, there's not.
There's not.
It's really strange because I'm not speaking for all
but
cancer patients.
Your personal situation,
you don't feel like you're ever cancer free.
Right.
I don't know what it is. It's a trauma.
Yeah.
I remember coming out of there, and actually my other half was allowed to come with me to that appointment. And he was just like, oh my God, he was elated. Like, thank God, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I just felt really numb because I think as well I had chemo coming up. I had, and then I knew I had all of the hormone therapy, and I still had a reconstruction coming up, which is a major, major operation. It's not what people think it is. And there was still hurdles to go over.
Understood.
And I think only now, since stopping the hormone therapy, I actually feel cancer free.
Okay.
Because when you're still going through treatment, which most cancer patients are, even after they get that wonderful news, by the way, I'm not saying that's not the news that you don't want to hear. Yeah. You've still got a lot of hurdles to go over. Yeah. So you're just, you feel like it's a really strange, there's a real psychological thing. And I don't think that there is enough support out there for people post-cancer for the mental sort of effects of something like that, no matter how good your prognosis was. Yeah, you just feel like a cancer patient forever, and you essentially feel like your cards are marked. Yeah. Like, I know one day I'll probably die from this disease. So it's just something that you have to learn to live with. Yeah.
That's a really good call to arms, I think, that focus that there needs to be more support post-diagnosis or post being labelled cancer-free. Doesn't mean that the whole impact, the trauma, the PTSD almost from that whole experience is still with you. It's really strange, and there's so much that needs to change in the system when people are diagnosed. I can't tell you the amount of leaflets I was handed at every appointment. I didn't look at them. Right. I don't want to look at them. I'm dealing with a cancer diagnosis and an 18-month-old and a pandemic and a new job. I don't want to look at your leaflets. Yeah. Like, there needs to be but also who does? Who does anymore? Like, we get everything on our phone, and I remember saying to them, there needs to be an app. Yeah. You need to give me an app or something. And I need a notification of, you know, being a 30-year-old with cancer and dating after cancer, because they just put you in that demographic, which is fine. But there's 50-year-olds that are single and want to date after cancer. And there's so much that I could talk about on it. But yeah, that kind of the mental side effects, you're really supported during, but after all of the treatment, you are left. Yeah. And you are then not in your survival mode anymore. You're not then thinking, right, I've got chemo, right, let's do this. Round 1, round 2, got to get through that. Yeah. You're then left and you're like, what the fuck has just happened to me? And no one's there to support you. And you are offered to go to this group or go to this meetup. I don't want to go there. I am processing, you know, some people might want to. They might feel comfortable doing that. It wasn't for me. I was just like, no, I'm a bit more internal, and I want to process things maybe a little bit more on my own. Some of the words that come to mind, and maybe these are right or wrong, but like you're mourning to a degree, there's grief that you're going through, all these things that people process in a very personal and individual way. And okay. I mean, I'm going to go on speaking about work again, Carly.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead.
But I don't I'm not glazing over anything that you've discussed. I think it's incredibly brave that you're so honest and open about your experience with it. So thank you for that.
That's all right.
But I think what you've just said will really resonate with a lot of people. The whole post-care, post-support piece. So if that can just highlight that as an issue, I think that's really important to share. So
and I think if anyone is actually struggling with that as well, Breast Cancer Now are amazing. So call their helpline.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll put that in the episode description too. Thank you for that. Okay, so you've gone through quite a journey. February 2022, you're working with Influencer. We're kind of getting all the news that the pandemic's over. This is it. Like, you know, as much as it is over, there's still glimpses every now and again of it returning, as in like COVID. But February 2022, you have another challenge at work.
Yeah.
Which is the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now, I don't, you know, a lot of people would have had to, in your position in companies with a workforce out in that area, would have had to deal with a similar thing. But that, as a head of heart, that you still were at the time? I
was VP.
VP.
Yeah, I was promoted to VP within 18 months.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, I was VP at that time.
Right. So you've already played a significant role in Influencer's growth through some really tumultuous times in your personal life too. And then the Russia-Ukraine invasion happens.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me a little bit about what that is like? Because there's making 60 people redundant, and then there are dealing with helping people that work for your company that are living in a war zone. So it's quite a broad question, but tell me about what that experience was like.
The most challenging time in my career to date, without a doubt. And that actually really I would say that actually really impacted me personally as well. I mean, of course it would.
Yeah. Again, as an empath or just a human being.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we sort of spoke about how I can kind of go into this block. And I do think that's very common amongst HR professionals. You know, you have to, because you're dealing with people's lives and sometimes you have to give them not great news. And you learn to kind of block. But that was something that you couldn't. So we tried to prepare for it as much as we could. I was doing a lot of contingency planning at the time. I had a team over in Ukraine, all engineers, and I was speaking to them about what they thought was happening, you know, a bit about the history of everything that was going on. Or, you know, you're trying to like understand what the actual history between Russia and Ukraine
and the cultural significance, because we're detached from it, especially at that point.
And also, you know, there was so much media buzz going on around it at the time. You kind of are like, okay, are we creating something here that might not be?
Of course.
And they were very relaxed about it. They were very, this has been going on for like 70 odd years, Carly, you know, we don't need to worry. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but if this is going to be happening. And I remember at the time, the tanks were literally on the border. And I was like, you know, the tanks are there. So what is your plan if there's an attack? And they were telling me where they were going to go. And that was in terms of either north, south, west, whatever, country. And also we had a sponsorship license. So I was trying to also understand if they'd come over to the UK, how easy that would be for them. Their family set up, you know, because some, you know, don't want to leave their family. Some are parents, some are carers for their parents. They're not going to leave their parents. And I was just trying to understand everything. And then from that information I was getting, I then started to understand a little bit more about the countries they were going into, the schools in their areas, Airbnbs, housing, how much that would cost. So we could then provide a relocation package for them. And I wanted to get all of that signed off before anything should happen, and I did.
Right.
And we agreed it. Ben, my CEO, and I, and our chief product officer, Raf, who you know well at the time. So we did that, and I'm so glad that we did that.
What an amazing thing.
It just meant that when it happened, on that day, we swung right into action. We had the whole action plan there, and we just went into action. But
have you got a support network of other people like you in organisations that and you have an opportunity to collaborate, or at least have conversations to sanity check points, and are there forums? You know, what is your community like from that perspective?
I have a huge community.
Yeah, doing it on your own is I would imagine impossible. But
yeah, it is. So since the pandemic, actually, I had a community before, but it definitely grew since the pandemic because of obviously all of that. So yeah, I have Slack groups, and through that I've got a great community, and people are literally at the end of the phone if I want to call them about things. So
well needed, because again, in that, especially in that leadership role, it can be a very lonely place.
Yeah, it is a lonely
especially
place.
in your organisation. You are expected to be the oracle, like the fountain of knowledge. Help us, Carly.
Exactly.
Fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
let me try.
Yeah.
What an amazing initiative, though, like to be able to collate all of that stuff and then go and get it done.
Yeah, it was. And I'm so proud of the work that we did there, and how we helped and how we led the organisation through that as well. Because obviously, aside from my engineers literally being in a war zone, everybody else in the company was really distressed with what was going on, what they were seeing. We were keeping the contingency planning. They don't need to know that. Everybody in the business didn't need to know that. Leadership knew about it. We didn't want to worry anyone, but obviously when they can see what's happening on the news, it was really important that comms were going out from us to say how the team are, what we're doing, and how they can be looking after themselves as well at the time. So I'm really, really proud of how we led that.
Yeah.
And just so everyone knows that the whole team were fine, and they managed to get to safety. But the resilience of the Ukrainian people is just makes me upset, because they're just amazing.
Yeah, what a thing to go through on the back of everything else. I know, Carly. It's just absolute madness.
I know.
Okay, I'm just thinking from your perspective, how the hell do you reflect that on a CV? Like, it's such a pivotal thing that you've done and played a part in, but to try and do that, I read CVs and the guidance I give is try and keep it concise, but I'm like, wow. Okay. So you are playing, I think, in all of the roles that you've been in, but especially influencer, where you've been given this scope to really build a culture from the ground up. Culture, I think, is... you can tell me if it's wrong, but an important part of what you do is in building, developing, defining a culture. Can you, I'm putting you on the spot. Can you tell me your definition of what a culture is within an organisation or a business?
Yeah, I mean, culture to me is how your organisation behaves. It's how they have their meetings. It's their values. It's how they live and breathe their values. It's the guiding principles around their values. It's how they're growing their people. And it's their transparency with their people. It's how they're communicating with their people. That's culture to me.
Yeah.
It's not ping pong tables and pizza and... That is an element of it. There is an element of social, which is really important. But all the other stuff is so much more important.
Yeah.
And that's culture to me in an organisation.
Yeah. Because I think holistically, I mean, again, it's a big narrative on LinkedIn, like, stick two fingers up to ping pong tables and pizza and all this stuff. Don't get me wrong, I think it plays a small part in a much, much bigger puzzle. Yeah. But yeah, showcasing your culture by highlighting those aspects of just having a cool office, even if you define that as a cool office, is probably not hitting the nail on the head. So I love that. What is it, because you talked about identifying your passion and now understanding what it is you want to be when you grow up, and which is amazing. I think like learning that about yourself and understanding that, I think is really important. But what is it that keeps you passionate about doing this for businesses moving forward? The whole culture piece. Is it the people? I'm assuming it's the people and the mission. It's the people.
It's the change that you can, as a people leader, that you can implement. It's being that calm in the chaos. That's what I love about it. It's the growth as well. Yeah. Especially in the startup scale up space, I wouldn't have the career I've had if I'd have gone and worked for some massive 1,000-person corporate. Yeah. I just would be, I don't know, I just wouldn't be doing what I do now.
Well, I guess when you talk about change, you've got more opportunities to facilitate change in a smaller organisation. Yeah. And for me, when I'm hiring for startup and scale-ups, again, working with people like yourself and working closely with people, heads of people, VPs of people, being part of that early stage in defining what the culture is, I think it's tough because you play an even more important role, but at least you're shaping something from the ground up.
Yeah,
as opposed to having to go into an organisation, looking at a culture and thinking, shit, we need to make some changes here.
Yeah.
Because doing that retrospectively, I imagine, is harder.
Yeah, it is.
It's just a different challenge.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me as well, it's about, in the job, you're helping people as well. And I think that's part of my purpose.
Yeah.
I just want to help people.
Yeah.
You know, I want to help employees in work understand what their rights are as an employee. I want to help CEOs and founders grow their businesses. And I want to help others, you know, like I want to help mothers in the workplace. I want to help women going through menopause in the workplace. I want to help people grow their careers because I'm someone who literally has hustled to get to where I am now.
Yeah.
And I know what that's like. I wanted to start from the bottom to get to essentially the top.
Yeah.
And that's just what I want to do. I want to help people that have had breast cancer. I want to help people understand how important well-being is and their nutrition is and how important exercise is and things like that. And I feel like I can do all of that in what I do.
Yeah.
So it's quite a powerful, empowering position to be in an organisation. But I take a great deal of like responsibility with what I do. But yeah, and I just love it.
Yeah. That's what it falls down to, isn't it?
That's what it falls down to.
You just love it. Yeah. And that really comes across. So maybe give me an idea, because I think it's going to be interesting to a lot of people that maybe don't work in that space. And there's a couple of, again, I keep using the word narrative, but let's say there's opinions floating around that culture might be the wrong word sometimes to define or describe what people are building in organisations, or, you know, hiring to a culture fit, as an example. I give that, and people seemingly have an issue with that sometimes. But I think just having a bit of a insight into what it's like and the impact you make on a company culture. So let's say influencer, using that as an example, what is some of your methodology at going into a business from at that level, and then being the orchestrator, the artist, if you like, of building that culture from the ground up? Like, what are some of the pivotal or key things that you focus on when you first join? This isn't an interview, by the way. I'm not interviewing for a job, but I'm just interested. I think a lot of people might be. In
building a culture.
Yeah, because it's such a broad task. Like if you said to me, right, we need help building our culture, but some companies are looking for that.
Yeah.
So what do you focus on? What are the building blocks?
I think it's about thinking about it really purposefully.
Okay.
I've always said to think about it like it's a product of your business, and it is a product of your business. You know, your employees are your greatest asset is what's always kind of said, and it is true. So you need to think your culture like a product. So you need to, something that I actually did at Influencer is I workshopped it. I workshopped our values. You know, are these the values that we want? What other, you know, values do we want? What are the behaviours that we want from these values? What are the guiding principles in the company that we want people to sort of remind themselves? This is what we kind of stand for, and this is how we want you to be operating. And, you know, again, like I say, like, what are our kind of key behaviours? What do we want to be seeing from people? And how can we build that? How can we kind of build that into our workforce? So ways that you can do that in a company are through progression and development pathways and frameworks. You know, you have your different levels and things like that in organisations. So, okay, I'm a junior. How do I get to be a level 3, a managerial position? This is what the organisation would want to see from me behaviourally.
Yes.
This is how they want to see me holding meetings. This is how they want to see me showcase the company externally.
Yeah.
This is what they want to see from me in terms of my training, and that kind of thing. So I think that is a really great way, a starting point with your culture.
I completely agree. I mean, I've started doing some consulting work around employee value proposition and going into companies. And I have to say, the businesses I enjoy supporting most are startups, because you are doing that from the ground up. And I think for any business, so if I were looking to grow, the first person I would hire or the first person I would look for advice from is someone like you.
Yeah,
because
and it's surprising how many companies don't.
It's scary because I think it's undervalued skill set.
I completely
number one. Agree. It's underappreciated.
Yeah.
And you think you're going to be able to do it retrospectively.
Yeah.
But imagine how much harder that is when you've got a team of people working with you that are all, you might have, I don't know, you might have mistakenly created this culture through the army of people you've got working for you at any one stage. But if it's not been driven, as you say, if people don't understand the why, or they're not on board with the values or the mission or the purpose, as you continue to grow, that's going to become a shaky foundation to build on, isn't it? So yeah, for me, I'm not just big up in the people your skill set, but honestly, if I was looking to grow, you'd be the first person I'd be speaking to.
Yeah.
Because I'd need that guidance, and I want the building blocks, the foundation to be as solid as it possibly could be.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I'm in a process with a company at the moment, and I know they've had the role advertised for about 4 or 5 months, and I just said, why have you taken so long to fill this role?
Yeah.
You know, I know this role has been open for a really long time. I know when I applied,
Great question
why are you
to ask
talking
too,
to me now? And they were just like, oh, you know, we've just kind of put it on hold and for this reason, that reason. And I was just like, that's the worst thing that you could do. You want to scale to X number of people in the next 3 years. You should have hired me or someone like me a few months ago, because I really, truly believe once you get that funding and you're able, to the company has kind of got that investment and you've got that backing, I think your people leader should be your first hire. Yeah. Because not just for that, like that culture building, but there's that with the founders, the CEOs, you are there. You're just, well, for me, I'm there at the end of the phone at several times,
therapy,
points in the day, therapy,
coaching, whatever it is,
coaching, advice, all of it. There's so much. I mean, look at what the world has thrown at us over the last few years. Hopefully, you know, we don't have.
We're on an even keel for a little bit, please God, until the aliens come.
But you just need that person. You need that person who's got those soft skills in your organisation, which are just so essential to growing your workforce, to having a workforce that are truly behind you, who are going to perform and really thrive. So it's just such an important role. Culture's so important. And it's
so broad, so vast. I think the mistake a lot of people, as we've already we've both defined, is that people feel like they can do it themselves and they undervalue that as a skill set. And the term, I think you probably engaged actually with a blog that I did on soft skills being such a bad label for the set of skills that I think are going to be the real differentiators for everyone moving forward, especially with automation, especially with AI. Like soft skills will be. We have to come up with a different label, but they're undermined qualities in people just because we call them soft skills, but these are the differentiators as we progress. I've got a couple more questions and then we're nearly done. I was going to talk to you about the evolution of the skill set that you've got and whether that's been accelerated by things like the pandemic, by things like the war in Ukraine. And I think people, as I label them, are doing so much more now. And I do think that the pandemic could really be a new chapter starting. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, yeah.
It's just such a more far-reaching role now.
It is.
And I think, broadly speaking, more people respect what it is that you guys are doing now than ever. There's a lot more value placed around it. But how do you think it's grown? Do you feel like, fingers crossed, we are on now a bit more of an even keel in terms of, hopefully there's no more pandemics or wars, but
hopefully not.
You've seen the evolution of it.
I've seen the evolution of it. I think the pandemic really polarized it, highlighted what we can do. And for me, it's an evolution of a skill set. I always knew it was there. I always knew it was in me. I didn't quite know what it was, but it's played out, and I had it in me. I think as well, there's a lot around sustainability now that's on the map. You know, influencer, I got them to B Corp status.
Yeah, amazing.
And that's a whole new operation that you're taking on. There's an ecosystem around what we actually do.
Yes, yeah.
There truly is. And and that role is just getting bigger. So organizations just really need to think about that with the people that they're hiring. But there's huge around sustainability and things like that. So
it's and in that regard, it's only going to become even more involved as companies have bigger drivers now to focus on things like sustainability as part of employee value proposition too. Like, people want to work for companies that give a fuck basically about the environment, about community, about their people. And it's hard for companies to do that without that guidance. I don't envy a lot of businesses out there for having to try and tick all these boxes, but do more than that, actually care. But there's a lot to be doing, and to do that without the right guidance, I think is you're cruising to a pretty bad place.
I agree. And I think with like I say, this Gen Z generation that are kind of coming in now into the workforce, it's actually, I've found it the most challenging over the last few years, because they do want to work for really purpose-led companies that align with their own values. And it's not just about salary anymore. It really isn't. They want to know how you're going to progress them. What's your company doing to like socially impact the environment or society, and what's my role going to play in that?
It's a really good point.
It's what people care about now, and your company has got to showcase that.
Because meaningful work is one of the 4 pillars that I talk about when I discuss EVP. And it's not just meaningful work is like, show me what the contribution I'm making to the company, show me the contribution that the company and the work I'm doing is making to community, or the environment, or the world in general. I love it. I love it. And I love speaking to the next generation of people coming through, because I'm also dealing with hiring managers that are not that way inclined and do still quite archaic mindset of, now we're paying salaries that, first off, they should be thankful that we've got the opportunities, which I think is a very wrong mindset to get into when you're hiring in general. I agree. But I'm noticing the generational divide now between a generation that still believes it's all about the money, we're giving them opportunity, they should be thankful for us. And then the next generation coming through and asking so many more questions. And that means a recruiter's job is evolving too, because if you don't know about the business and the clients and the companies you're recruiting for, people will not buy into that either. So amazing.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. I love it.
I'm excited by it.
I've been more excited about working in and around this space. There's overlaps between what we do, Carly, but not, you've got a much vaster role than what I do. But I'm more excited about my job now and the types of roles I can put out there and the types of organisations and what they're doing for their people than I ever have been. And the gulf between those that invest in it and those that don't is so clear to see. So it makes my life easier. If I know, well, you've not got this in place, you're not offering your people this, I can just, I can't do it for you then. What advice would you give to people? So say there is someone listening that was, around your age when you started moving into this space for the first time, into that stonemasons. What advice would you give them at the very start of their career in this kind of world? If they want to move into a career that focuses on people and culture and making workplaces better, any advice?
Oh, that's a really tough one.
I know. I like putting people on the spot.
I think it's tough as well, because like you just want to come out with something really inspirational.
It doesn't have to be profound.
If you want to be a mermaid, go for it. That's what I'm going to say. No, I think it's just listen to your intuition. It's really hard to know who you are. So, invest in mentorship is probably one of the biggest things. Actually, I would say I did a post about it on LinkedIn, but definitely I've always had that. I've had various kind of mentors throughout my career at different stages, my first one being my dad. And I just, even in that sense, if you have a family member or someone who can really support you on your journey, I think that's something that's kind of really important. But community is everything. And if you can get yourself, I do get messages from people who are starting out in their careers on LinkedIn, and they ask for my time, and I'll give them my time. So don't think that people aren't going to give you your time. So community is everything at that early stage, when you want to sort of surround yourself in this new future of work. So I would definitely, that would probably be my bit of
I love
advice.
That you really warmed up into that answer, because you were struggling at the start. It wasn't at all. No, it's brilliant. And I think it's a really good point. One of the biggest things I think I could have benefited from is having a mentor. I felt like I had some when I was working in the agency I started in. I don't think I did. I should have gone for someone external. And at that,
go for someone external, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Because at an earlier age as well, you also just don't understand the importance or the impact a mentor can make. Now, after running this business, I've had maybe 3 or 4 that mentor me on different things, plus therapy. Like all of these things help holistically. Yeah. So I think if I'd discovered that when I was younger, I'm not saying it's not a goal to be further on than where I am now, but maybe I would have known myself a bit better or a bit earlier, let's say, than I do now. That would have been nice.
I agree. I agree. And no question is kind of too stupid when you're sort of talking to a mentor. You use them to talk about their experiences for sure. And if you are in a company and you want that kind of internal mentor, use them for your own progression in that company.
Yeah, for sure.
Use them really well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Cheers for that, Carly. Right, we're done.
Okay.
I do have a closing tradition on the podcast.
Okay.
Do you know it?
No.
I love this because I put people on the spot. I'm like, this is where I find out if anyone's listened to the whole episode, and it's fine. The closing tradition. So I'm assuming you've listened to Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. Have you ever listened to any of those?
Yes.
So it's nothing to do. He doesn't ask the question, but on his podcast, he gets the previous guest to leave a question for the next guest.
Oh, okay.
Now, I don't do that because I think that's copyrighted. But what I do is ask my mum to leave a question for the guest. Now, mum has played a big role in my marketing because I don't have much money to do it. So mum's played a big role in my marketing for my recruitment agency when I first started out. So mum has left you a question on a voice note that I have no idea what it is. Now, mum obviously remembers you from being Luke's friend at school.
I used to come round to your house and hang out with Luke.
Yeah, so she remembers you well. So she's left.
Oh, God.
Now, so I do give her a bio on what the conversation is. So I don't think she's going to be asking anything about you coming round to the house when we were teenagers. But let me get this now. I'm going to play you the voice note. Again, I don't listen to this. Hopefully it's something semi-related to what you do, but we'll see.
Hi Carly, what's your favourite team building exercise with the companies that you work with? Thanks very much.
Bless her. So my mum's name's Lisa, just in case you didn't remember.
I do remember.
But yeah, I don't know if that's the sort of thing that you cover in your role. I would imagine it's something where you delegate it or outsource it to someone else. But team building, is that even still a thing?
Yeah, I do have a favourite one actually. I do
brilliant.
Do a few, yeah.
Okay.
I do also outsource it for leadership. But one of my favourite ones is Pechakucha.
Okay.
So it's a Japanese team building exercise, and what you have to do is it's really great for hybrid remote working companies because you can do it online or you can do it in person. But what you have to do is you have sort of say 15 slides and on each slide you have a picture and you have 10 seconds to describe what that picture is, and it's just a really great way for people to understand a bit about you and who you are and sort of break the ice.
Okay. Nice,
in any sort of particular setting, and you can ask any question on the slide.
Yep.
So that's probably one of my favourite ones. We used to use it all the time actually at Influencer quite a lot actually.
Nice. Okay.
And it's a really great way to get to know someone, know their story, know their passions, and how they work. So yeah, it's definitely one of my favourite ones.
Brilliant. Do you mind if we put a link to that or a way of describing that exercise? Yeah, that'd be quite handy to put in the description as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
No, that's a really good one.
It's quite a sensible question from Mum for once
I was
as
a bit
well,
scared.
because there are some curveballs that she throws out. Carly, it has been a genuine pleasure, this conversation. Thank you for being so open and transparent as well.
Thank you.
And
it's been lovely. Thanks for asking me on.
No, you're very welcome. All right, I will speak to you soon. Thank you.
Speak to you soon.